The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was never quiet for 10,000 years. Representatives from 100 worlds had gathered in this ancient station, floating at the center of known space. They argued, they traded, they made war and peace with words before weapons. The hall had seen empires rise and fall. It had witnessed the birth of alliances and the death of entire species. But today the hall was silent. Ambassador Axe of the Collective stood at the central platform. His gray skin was pale, his 4 eyes blinked rapidly. As he struggled to find words, around him, representatives from dozens of species waited. Some sat in chairs designed for their bodies, others floated in liquid tanks, a few existed only as holograms, their true forms too large or too strange to attend in person. They all watched Axe, they all waited. 3 cycles ago, Axe finally said the Draconian Empire launched its 8th fleet toward a small system on the outer edge of the galaxy. Their target was a planet called Earth. A murmur passed through the crowd. Most of them had heard of Earth. It was an unremarkable world orbiting an unremarkable star. Dominant species, they called themselves humans. They were young, they were primitive, they had only recently discovered how to leave their own planet. By galactic standards, they were barely worth noticing. The Draconian High Command classified humanity as a pest species. Axe continued, they sent the 8th Fleet to cleanse the system. 1,200 warships, 3 million soldiers, the largest military force deployed in the last 500 years. High Admiral of the Draconian Empire sat in his designated section of the hall. He was a massive creature covered in dark green scales. His yellow eyes watched Axe with cold patience. Draconians were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had destroyed civilizations that refused to submit. To them, humanity was just another problem to be solved. The fleet was expected to complete its mission in 1 standard cycle. Axe said they would destroy all human settlements, sterilize the planet, and claim the system for Draconian expansion. This was considered a simple operation, routine. Axe paused. He looked down at the data pad in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly. The 8th Fleet never returned. The silence in the hall grew heavier. Representatives leaned forward. Even the Draconians stirred in their seats. No distress signals were received. Axe said, no communications of any kind. Our long-range sensors detected no debris fields, no radiation signatures from battle, no evidence of combat whatsoever. He looked up at the assembled representatives. 1,200 warships and 3 million Draconian soldiers have simply vanished as if they never existed. High Admiral rose to his full height. He towered over the representatives around him. When he spoke, his voice was like stones grinding together. This is why we have called this emergency session, he said. The Draconian Empire demands answers. Where's our fleet? What happened to our warriors? His yellow eyes swept across the hall. Someone in this council knows something. Someone will tell us the truth. The other representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Draconians were not known for their patience. When they wanted answers, they usually took them by force. Elder Counselor N of the Etheran people rose slowly from her seat. She was ancient, even by galactic standards. Her translucent body glowed with soft blue Light, the Aetherans were scholars and historians. They kept records of everything that happened in the galaxy. We have examined all available data, said. Her voice was soft but carried clearly through the hall. Our observation posts detected the 8th Fleet entering the Sol system as planned. They established standard attack formation around the 3rd planet Earth. She waved her hand and a holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a small blue and green planet hanging in space. Around it, hundreds of red dots represented Draconian warships. This was the fleet's position, 72 standard hours after arrival. Continued, they had completed their scan of the planet. They were preparing to begin orbital bombardment. She paused. And then this happened. The holographic display flickered. When it stabilized, every red dot was gone. The planet Earth floated alone in space, peaceful and undamaged. The fleet disappeared in less than 1 hour. Said, our sensors detected no weapons fire, no explosions, no energy signatures of any kind. The ship simply stopped transmitting all of them simultaneously. The hall erupted into noise. Representatives shouted questions. Some demanded more information. Others accused the Aetherans of hiding something. The Draconians hissed and growled among themselves. High Admiral slammed his fist against the railing in front of him. The sound echoed through the hall like a thunderclap. Everyone fell silent. Impossible, growled. The 8th Fleet carried enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. Their shields could withstand a supernova. No primitive species could defeat them. No weapon could destroy them without leaving traces. He pointed at the holographic display. Something happened in that system, something that someone in this council is hiding. Ambassador Axe raised his hands in a calming gesture. No one is hiding anything, High Admiral. That is precisely the problem. We do not know what happened. We have no information. We have only silence. Then we will find the truth ourselves, said. The Draconian Empire will send another fleet. We will go to Earth and burn the answers out of whatever remains. That would be unwise, said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. She was commander of the military. She was smaller than most, but her reputation was large. She had solved dozens of impossible cases. She had uncovered secrets that entire empires had tried to hide. When investigated something, she found the truth. If we send another fleet without understanding what destroyed the first one, she said, we may simply lose more ships. We need information, not weapons. We need to investigate. Glared at her. And who would conduct this investigation? I will, said. Give me a small ship and a small team. I will go to Earth. I will find out what happened to your fleet, and I will bring back the truth. Hall buzzed with discussion. The idea had merit. A small investigation team would be less threatening than a battle fleet. They might learn things that an army never could. Elder Counselor N nodded slowly. The Aetheran people support this proposal. We will send one of our scholars to assist. Scholar has studied human civilization for many years. Her knowledge will be valuable. A young Aetheran woman stood up in the Aetheran section. She was smaller than N. Her glow a lighter shade of blue. She bowed respectfully to the council. High Admiral considered the proposal. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, but he was not a fool. He knew that rushing into Unknown danger was how empires fell. Very well, he said finally, but the Draconian Empire will not trust outsiders alone with this matter. One of our own will join the investigation. General S will accompany your team. He will represent Draconian interests and ensure that nothing is hidden from us. A Draconian officer stood up. He was older than most of his kind. His green scales faded to a dull gray in places. One of his eyes was missing, replaced by a glowing red mechanical implant. General S had fought in 100 battles. He had seen things that would drive lesser beings mad. If anyone could face the unknown and survive, it was him. I accept this duty, S said. His voice was quieter than but no less dangerous. I will find out what happened to our fleet, and if I discover that some treachery has occurred, I will personally ensure that those responsible pay with their lives. Commander nodded. Then we have an agreement. We leave at once. The ship they took was called the Quiet Observer. It was a research vessel, fast and well equipped but not designed for combat. It had advanced sensors and communication systems. It could detect things that military ships would miss. The journey to Earth took 3 standard cycles. During that time, the 3 investigators reviewed everything they knew about humanity. Scholar provided most of the information. She had spent decades studying Earth from afar. She showed them images of human cities, recordings of human broadcasts, and translations of human literature. They are a fascinating species, said as she displayed a map of Earth on the ship's main screen. They call their planet Earth, which in their most common language means soil or ground. They are incredibly diverse, hundreds of different cultures, thousands of different languages. They fight among themselves constantly, yet they also create remarkable art and music. General S studied the images with his one good eye. They look weak, he said. Soft bodies, no natural weapons, no scales or shells for protection. How did such creatures ever survive on their world? Through intelligence and cooperation. Said humans are not strong individually, but they work together in ways that few species can match. They share knowledge across generations. They build tools to overcome their physical limitations. In many ways they are similar to us Etherians, and yet they are barely space-faring. Commander said she was reviewing the technical data on human civilization. According to our records, they only developed faster than light travel. Within the last century, their ships are primitive, their weapons are generations behind galactic standards. The 8th Fleet should have destroyed them without effort. That is what makes this mystery so troubling. Agreed by every measure. We have humanity should not have been able to resist the Draconian attack. Yet, clearly something happened, something that defies our understanding. General S growled low in his throat. Perhaps they had outside help, perhaps some other power intervened. Possible, said, but who? No other space faring civilization exists in that region. The nearest council member is the N. We certainly did not intervene. She shook her head. No, whatever happened was something else entirely. Something we have not encountered before. The Quiet Observer dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Immediately their sensors began scanning for any sign of the Draconian fleet. They found nothing. No ships, no debris, no residual radiation. The system was clean. This is wrong, S said. He leaned over the sensor display, his mechanical eye warring as it analyzed the data. Even if the fleet was completely destroyed, there should be something left, fragments, energy, traces, bodies. He slammed his fist against the console. You cannot make 1,200 ships simply disappear. Apparently, said quietly, someone can. As they moved deeper into the system, they began to pick up other signals. Human communications, radio and video transmissions, traffic between Earth and various orbital stations. They are still here, said with obvious surprise. The humans survived, not just survived, they appear to be thriving. The sensor display showed Earth surrounded by satellites in space stations. Human ships moved between them, going about their normal business. There was no sign of war, no sign of destruction, no sign that anything unusual had happened at all. Impossible. As breath, the fleet would have reduced that planet to ashes. Every city should be burning. Every human should be dead. Instead, Earth floated peacefully. Space, its blue oceans and green continents clearly visible. Lights twinkled on the night side, marking the locations of major cities. It was beautiful. It was completely intact. We are being hailed, announced. She looked at her console with confusion. It is a human transmission. They are welcoming us to their system and asking us to identify ourselves. The three investigators exchanged glances. They had expected many things. They had expected to find a dead world or a burning wreck. They had expected hostility or fear. They had not expected a polite welcome. Respond, said, tell them we are a Galactic Council investigation team. We are here to inquire about recent events. She sent the message and waited. The response came quickly. Council investigators, this is Earth Traffic Control. We have been expecting you. Please proceed to the following coordinates for docking. Representatives of the United Earth Government will meet you upon arrival. We hope your journey was pleasant. The message ended. The coordinates appeared on their navigation system, pointing toward a large space station in Earth orbit. S stared at the message. His remaining eye was wide with disbelief. They have been expecting us, he repeated. They knew we would come. It seems, said slowly, that humanity knows more than we thought. The quiet observer changed course toward Earth. As they approached, they got a better view of the planet and its defenses, or rather, its lack of defenses. The orbital stations appeared to be civilian. The ships moving around them were transports and cargo vessels. There were no weapons platforms, no military vessels, nothing that could possibly threaten a Draconian warship. Where are their defenses? S demanded. Where are the weapons that destroyed our fleet? No one had an answer. They docked at the station without incident. The docking process was smooth and professional, no different than arriving at any civilized port in the galaxy. Human greeted them through the airlock, smiling warmly and gesturing for them to follow. The human was a young male with brown skin and dark hair. He wore a simple uniform and carried no visible weapons. He did not seem afraid of them, even though S towered over him and could have killed him with one blow. Welcome to Earth, the human said. My name is David. I will take you to meet Director. She handles all matters related to galactic affairs. Where is your military? Ease demanded. Where are your weapons? David looked at him with calm eyes. We have no need for such things here. General, this is a peaceful station, he Smiled again. Please follow me. The director is waiting. They followed the human through clean corridors filled with other humans going about their daily lives, workers, scientists, families with children, everyone they passed seemed happy and relaxed. No one showed any fear or hostility toward the alien visitors. As found it deeply disturbing, these people had faced an invasion force that could have destroyed their entire civilization. They should be terrified. They should be preparing for the next attack. Instead, they acted as if nothing had happened. Commander walked beside him, her sharp eyes taking in everything. Notice the technology, she said quietly, the materials, the design of this station. S looked more carefully. The walls were made of some substance he did not recognize. The lighting systems were more advanced than anything the Draconians used. The artificial gravity was perfectly calibrated, better than most council stations. This is not primitive technology, said. This is advanced, possibly more advanced than our own. That cannot be, S said. Our intelligence said they were barely space faring. Your intelligence, replied, was clearly wrong. They reached a large door. At the end of a corridor, David pressed his hand against a panel and the door slid open smoothly. Director will see you now, he said. They entered a spacious office with windows that looked out over Earth. The view was stunning. The planet filled the window, its atmosphere glowing in the light of the local star. A woman stood by the window, her back to them. She was tall for a human, with silver hair pulled back in a simple style. When she turned to face them, her eyes were sharp and intelligent. She studied each of them in turn before speaking. Welcome to Earth, she said. I am director of the United Earth Defense Initiative. I understand you have questions about recent events. Where is our fleet? S demanded immediately. What happened to 3 million Draconian warriors? Director did not flinch. She did not look afraid. She simply met his gaze with calm certainty. Your fleet attempted to invade our world, she said. We handled the situation. Handled? E stepped forward threateningly. 200 warships do not simply get handled. What weapon did you use? What technology? Who helped you? Smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not friendly either. It was the smile of someone who knew something you did not. No one helped us, she said. We did not need help. You see, General, humanity has been preparing for this moment for a very long time. She gestured toward the window and the beautiful planet beyond. Your empire made a mistake. You looked at our world and saw weakness. You saw primitives who could not possibly resist your power. Her smile widened slightly. You were wrong. The 3 investigators stood in silence, staring at the human woman who spoke to them without fear, without hesitation. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly. In space, peaceful, intact, untouched. Somewhere in this system, 3 million Draconians had died, and humanity was not going to tell them how, not yet. Director stood before the 3 alien investigators like a stone wall. She was not tall compared to them. She was not armed. She had no visible protection. Yet she showed no fear, none at all. General S had fought enemies across 100 worlds. He had faced warriors twice his size. He had walked through fire and blood and never retreated. But something about this human woman made him uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. You will tell us what happened, S growled, the Galactic Council demands. Answers, the Draconian Empire demands. Justice, justice, repeated she. Tilted her head slightly as if considering the word. Your empire sent 1,200 warships to exterminate my species, every man, woman, and child on Earth was to be killed, our cities were to be burned, our history was to be erased. She paused. And you speak to me of justice. You were classified as a pest species, S. Said your elimination was approved by the Council. Yes, it was, nodded slowly. We know all about how the Council works, General. We know how younger species are evaluated. We know that any civilization deemed too weak, too primitive, or too inconvenient can be marked for extermination. We have been watching the galaxy for a very long time. Commander stepped forward. Unlike S, she approached the situation with calm professionalism. Director, we are not here to threaten you. We are here to investigate. Something happened to the Draconian fleet, something unprecedented. The Council needs to understand what that something was. Turned her attention to. Her expression softened slightly. Commander, I appreciate your reasonable approach, but you must understand our position. We have just survived an attempted genocide. We have no obligation to explain ourselves to the very Council that approved destruction. Then why allow us to come here? Asked. Why welcome us at all? Because we want peace, said. Humanity is not interested in war. We are not interested in conquest. We simply want to live our lives on our world without interference. If explaining some things to you helps achieve that goal, then we are willing to talk within limits. Scholar had been quietly observing the interaction. Now she spoke up. Director, I have studied human civilization for many years. Everything in our records indicates that your species should not have been able to resist the Draconian fleet. Your technology was documented as primitive. Your military was documented as minimal. Either our records were completely wrong or something fundamental has changed. Smiled at the Etherean Scholar. Perhaps both are true, Scholar. Perhaps your records were wrong because we wanted them to be wrong. The implication hung in the air. Ease felt his scales prickle with unease. You are saying you deliberately deceived us. You made yourselves appear weak. I am saying, replied carefully, that humanity has learned certain lessons over the centuries. We watched your galaxy from afar. We saw how powerful species treated weaker ones. We saw civilizations burned because they were different. We saw entire peoples enslaved because they could not defend themselves. She met S's gaze directly. We decided that we would not be one of those peoples, so you hid your true capabilities. Said you let everyone believe you were primitive while secretly developing advanced technology. I did not say that, replied. I simply pointed out that appearances can be deceiving. She gestured toward the door. But perhaps you would prefer to see some things for yourselves. I am authorized to give you a limited tour of our facilities. You may ask questions. I will answer what I can. The three investigators followed out of her office and into a transit vehicle. It moved smoothly through tunnels and corridors, taking them deeper into the orbital station and then down to the planet's surface. Through the vehicle's windows, they watched Earth grow larger. Clouds drifted over blue oceans. Green and brown continents spread beneath them. Cities sparkled with millions of lights. It was a beautiful world full of life. How many humans live on this planet? Asked 12 billion, answered, give or take. S made a noise of surprise. That was a large population, far larger than most species managed on a single world. The Draconians had never achieved more than 8 billion on there before expanding to colonies. We like to stay close to each other, said, noticing his reaction. Humanity is a social species. We thrive in communities, unlike some species we have not spread across the galaxy. We prefer to remain here on the world where we were born, or perhaps ease said, you have been prevented from expanding. Perhaps you were too weak to claim other worlds. Did not rise to the bait. Perhaps she agreed, or perhaps we simply chose not to. Not every species measures success by the number of worlds they conquer. General. The vehicle descended through the atmosphere and landed in a city that identified as Geneva. It was a beautiful place built around a large lake with snow-capped mountains in the distance. The buildings were tall and elegant, made of glass and steel and materials the investigators did not recognize. What struck them most was how peaceful everything seemed. People walked through the streets without urgency. Children played in parks. There were no soldiers, no visible weapons, no signs of military presence at all. Where's your army? Ease demanded as they walked through the city. Where are the defenses that protected you from the fleet? Our defense systems are not visible from here, said. They are not the kind of defenses you are imagining. What does that mean? Did not answer. Instead, she led them to a large building with the words United Earth Government carved into its stone facade. Inside, they were taken to a conference room where more humans waited for them. These are some of our leading scientists and historians, said they. Will help answer your questions within the limits I mentioned. An older human man stepped forward. He had gray hair and kind eyes behind small glasses. I am Dr. James, he said, Director of Historical Research for the United Earth Archives. I understand you want to know how humanity survived the Draconian attack. We want to know everything, said. Doctor smiled gently. Everything is quite a lot, General, but I can tell you some things. He activated a holographic display that showed a timeline of human history. Humanity has existed on this planet for approximately 300,000 years. For most of that time, we lived simple lives, hunting and gathering food. But about 10,000 years ago, we began to develop civilization. Cities, agriculture, writing. This is basic history. As interrupted. We already know this. Do you? Doctor asked. Do you know what happened in 2089? The investigators exchanged glances. According to their records, nothing significant had happened in 2089. Humanity had been slowly expanding into their solar system at that time, building colonies on their moon and on Mars. There was nothing remarkable about that year. In 2089, Doctor continued, a team of human explorers discovered something on Mars, something that changed everything. The holographic display shifted to show the red surface of Mars. A deep canyon appeared, and then the image zoomed into a cave system. Beneath the surface, we found ruins. Doctor said, ancient structures buried deep under the Martian surface. They were millions of years old. They belonged to a species that visited our solar system long before humanity existed. Leaned forward with sudden interest. The architects, she breathed. Doctor looked At her with surprise, you know that name, it is a legend among my people. Said stories of an ancient race that seeded life across the galaxy. We thought they were myths, they are not. Myths, doctor said, they were real and they left behind more than ruins, they left behind technology, information. Warnings, he paused. They left behind the truth about what exists in this galaxy. The holographic display changed. Again, now it showed images of strain, artifacts, alien writing, and complex machinery. The investigators stared at the images with growing unease. We have spent the last 250 years studying what the architects left behind, doctor said. Learning their language, understanding their technology, discovering their secrets. He looked at us directly. Draconians believed they were attacking a primitive species. They were wrong. We have been preparing for contact with the galaxy for over 2 centuries. We knew that someday someone would come to test us. We were ready. If you had this technology, S said slowly, why did you not use it to expand? Why did you not build an empire of your own? Because that is not what the architects wanted, doctor said, and it is not what humanity wants. We have no desire to conquer. We have no desire to rule over others. We simply want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. Then why hide? Commander asked. Why let the galaxy believe you were weak? Director answered this question. Because of species like the Draconians, she said. We watched the galaxy. We saw how advanced civilizations reacted to potential rivals. Any species that showed signs of rapid development was attacked, absorbed, or destroyed. The powerful do not like competition. She spread her hands. We decided it was better to appear harmless, to let everyone underestimate us, to prepare in secret. Prepare for what? S asked. For exactly what happened, said, for the day when someone decided to wipe us out, for the moment when we would have to reveal what we truly are. The implications were staggering. For over 200 years, humanity had been secretly developing advanced technology while the rest of the galaxy ignored them. They had weapons and capabilities that no one knew about, and they had used those capabilities to destroy the mightiest fleet the Draconian Empire had ever assembled. What did you do to our ships? S asked. His voice was quieter now, more uncertain. What weapon did you use? And doctor exchanged a look. Something passed between them, some silent communication that the investigators could not interpret. That information is classified, said. Finally, I told you there were limits to what we would share. The council will demand full disclosure, said. They will not accept partial answers. The council approved our extermination. Replied, they have no moral standing to demand anything from us. Her voice was calm but firm. We will share some information with you because we want peace, but we will not reveal everything. Some secrets are too dangerous. Too dangerous for whom? Ease growled, met his gaze steadily for everyone. Over the following days, the investigators were given access to certain parts of human civilization. They visited museums and universities. They spoke with scientists and ordinary citizens. They observed human society from the inside. What they found was confusing. The humans seemed genuinely peaceful. They had no militaries, no warrior culture, no history of galactic conquest. Their schools taught cooperation and understanding. Their governments worked together through a unified world council. They had eliminated most of their internal conflict centuries ago, and yet they had destroyed an invasion fleet without losing a single life. Scholars spent most of her time in the archives. She had been granted access to historical records that had never been seen by outsiders. What she discovered there shocked her. She found records of human conflicts from before their unification, wars that had killed millions, weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Humanity had a violent past, perhaps more violent than most species in the galaxy, but they had changed. Somewhere in their history, they had made a collective decision to end the cycle of violence. They had put aside their differences and worked together as one species. They had channeled their aggression into other pursuits, science, art, exploration. They had become peaceful not because they were weak, but because they had seen what violence truly meant. They had looked into the abyss of their own destruction and stepped back. Also found something else in the archives, references to something called the Prometheus Protocol. The name appeared in several classified documents, always surrounded by the highest levels of security. When she tried to access those files, she was politely but firmly, that information is not available to outside researchers. The archive keeper told her it relates to matters of planetary security, reported her findings to the other investigators. The name Prometheus meant nothing to them, but the fact that it was so heavily protected suggested it was important. Prometheus was a figure in human mythology, explained, a being who gave fire to humanity against the wishes of the gods. He was punished for sharing forbidden knowledge, an appropriate name for a secret weapon. Observed, something that gave humanity power they were not supposed to have. General S had been growing increasingly frustrated. Every question he asked was met with polite evasion. Every demand for information was redirected. The humans were friendly, welcoming, and completely unwilling to explain how they had destroyed his people's fleet. They are playing with us, S said during one of their private meetings. They invite us to their world, show us their cities, let us speak with their people, but they tell us nothing that matters. I disagree, said. They have told us something very important. They have shown us that everything we believed about humanity was wrong. They are not primitive, they are not weak. They have been watching us for centuries, preparing for this moment. She shook her head slowly. That is frightening enough on its own, but how did they destroy the fleet? S demanded. That is what we came here to learn. That is what we must report to the council. Perhaps they will tell us, said quietly. Eventually. What do you mean? I have been studying their behavior, said the way they speak to us, the things they show us and the things they hide. I believe they are evaluating us, testing us. She looked at S. They want to see if we can be trusted. Trusted with what? With the truth. On the 5th day of their investigation, Director called them to her office. Her expression was serious but not hostile. She stood by the window again, looking out at the stars. You have been patient, she said, more patient than I expected. I know you have many questions that remain unanswered. I know this frustrates you. She turned to face them. I have decided to show you something. Something that will answer some of your questions, though perhaps not in the way you expect. What will you show us? Asked was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. I We'll show you what remains of the Draconian fleet. The three investigators stared at her. For days they had assumed that the fleet had been completely destroyed, vaporized, erased from existence, but words suggested something different. The fleet still exists as asked. His voice was rough with sudden hope. There are survivors. Looked at him. Her eyes were filled with something that might have been pity. There are no survivors, she said, but the ships remain. I will take you to them, and then you will understand why we have been so reluctant to explain. She led them back to their ship. As they prepared for departure, Ease felt a strange mixture of emotions, hope that he might find answers, fear of what those answers might be, and beneath it all, a growing sense that he was about to witness something that would change his understanding of the universe forever. The quiet observer lifted off from Earth and headed toward the outer reaches of the solar system. Behind them, the blue planet grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light in the darkness. Ahead of them lay the truth, and the truth S was beginning to suspect would be more terrible than anything he had imagined. The journey to the outer solar system took several hours. Director traveled with them, sitting quietly the passenger section of the quiet observer while Commander piloted the ship. No one spoke much. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation and dread. General S stood at the main viewport, watching the darkness of space slide past. Behind them, the sun grew smaller. Ahead, there was nothing but empty blackness and distant stars. He had seen many terrible things in his long life. He had walked through the ruins of destroyed cities. He had counted the bodies of fallen warriors. He had witnessed the extinction of entire species, but something about this situation felt different. Something felt wrong in a way he could not explain. Scholars sat nearby, reviewing data on her portable console. She had been unusually quiet since they left Earth. Whatever she had discovered in the human archives had disturbed her deeply. She had not shared all of her findings with the others. We are approaching the belt, Commander announced. This is the outer region of the human solar system, mostly ice and rock. Very few ships come out this far. That is why we chose it, said. It was the first time she had spoken since they departed. It seemed appropriate, a place of cold and darkness. Appropriate for what? As asked, did not answer. She simply pointed toward the viewport. Look. At first saw nothing, just the empty black of space scattered with distant stars, but then the ships' sensors painted highlighting marks on the display, and he saw them. Ships. Hundreds of ships, thousands of ships. Draconian warships arranged in perfect formation, floating silently in the void. The 8th Fleet. All 1,200 vessels were there, battleships and cruisers, destroyers and carriers, troop transports and supply vessels. Every ship that had been sent to destroy humanity floated in the darkness. Exactly where they had been placed, they were intact. Not a single hole breach, not a single burn mark, no signs of battle damage whatsoever. The ships looked like they could power up and fly away at any moment, but they did not move. They did not respond to any signals. They were completely dark, completely dead, completely silent. Impossible as breath. He pressed his face against the viewport, staring at the ghost fleet with his one good eye. They are undamaged, all of them. How can this be? We did not damage them. Said quietly, we had no need to. Ships were never the threat. The threat was the people inside them. S turned to look at her, his mechanical eye word, as it analyzed her expression. What do you mean? The fleet arrived in our system, with weapons charged and shields raised. Explained, they broadcast a message to our entire planet: surrender or die. Total extermination, no negotiations, no mercy. She paused. We chose a third option. What option? Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was careful and measured. We activated our defense system. It did not target the ships, it targeted the crews. A cold feeling spread through S's body. He had assumed that the humans had some kind of advanced weapon, some technology that could destroy ships without leaving traces, but this was something different, something worse. You killed the crews, he said slowly, but left the ships intact. Yes, all 3 million of them, yes. Commander stood up from her pilot's seat. Her gray face was pale with shock. That is not possible. No weapon could do that. No technology could kill every person on every ship simultaneously without damaging the vessels themselves. Our defense system is not a conventional weapon, said. It does not use missiles or energy beams. It does not create explosions or radiation. She looked at the floating fleet through the viewport. It is something entirely different. General S felt his heart beating faster. 3 million Draconian warriors, 3 million of his people killed without a fight, without a chance to defend themselves, without even understanding what was happening to them. I want to see, he said. I want to board the flagship and see for myself. Nodded slowly. I expected you would. That is why I brought you here. She turned to Commander, please dock with the vessel designated as the fleet command ship, the large one in the center of the formation. Guided the quiet observer toward the flagship. Up close, the ship was enormous. It dwarfed their small research vessel like a mountain dwarfs a pebble. The Draconian Empire had built their warships to intimidate, to demonstrate their overwhelming power. The flagship was the largest vessel, the fleet capable of carrying 50,000 crew members and enough weapons to destroy a moon. Now it floated in silence, as dead as a stone. The docking procedure was difficult. The flagship systems were completely offline, so had to use manual overrides to attach their ship to an external airlock. When the connection was secure, S immediately moved toward the exit. Wait, said, before you go in, there is something you should know. What you will see inside is disturbing. The crew did not die peacefully. They did not die in pain either, but the experience of seeing them may be difficult. I have seen death before, S said. I am not afraid. I know, replied, but this is different from any death you have seen. S did not respond. He opened the airlock and stepped into the flagship. The interior was dark. Emergency lighting flickered in some sections, casting weak red shadows across the corridors. The air was cold and stale. The life support systems had shut down long ago, and the temperature had dropped to nearly freezing. S activated his suit's heating system and moved forward. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. The sound was wrong. Draconian ships were never quiet. They were always filled with the sounds of activity, voices, machines, the rumble of engines. This silence was unnatural, wrong. He found the first body in a corridor near the airlock. It was a young Draconian soldier lying on the floor as if he had simply fallen asleep. There were no wounds on his Body, no burns, no cuts, no signs of violence at all. His eyes were open. Staring at nothing, his mouth was slightly open. His expression was one of confusion rather than fear or pain. Selt beside the body and examined it carefully. The soldier's scales were intact. His armor was undamaged. His weapon was still in its holster, unfired. Whatever had killed him had done so instantly without giving him time to react. The investigators caught up to him. They stood in silence, looking at the dead soldier. He did not suffer, said quietly. None of them did. The process is instantaneous. One moment they were alive, the next moment they were not. What process? Ease demanded. What killed him? We call it the Prometheus Protocol, said. It is our ultimate defense system, our last resort against any threat that cannot be stopped by conventional means. S stood up and continued down the corridor. The further he went, the more bodies he found. They were everywhere. In hallways, in rooms at control stations, on the bridge, in the mess hall, in their sleeping quarters. Thousands of Draconians, all dead in the same way. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just death, sudden and complete. On the bridge, S found the fleet commander. Admiral had been one of the most decorated officers in the Draconian military. He had conquered dozen worlds. He had crushed rebellions and ended wars. He had been chosen to lead the attack on Earth because he was the best. Now he sat in his command chair, dead like all the others. His clawed hands still rested on the armrests. His yellow eyes stared at the mane, which showed only static. Whatever he had seen in his final moments had been replaced by meaningless noise. As accessed the bridge's emergency data recorder. The system was designed to survive almost anything, storing information even when the rest of the ship lost power. He downloaded the final hours of the fleet's existence. The recording showed the fleet arriving in the Sol system. They had approached Earth with confidence, their weapons charged and their shields raised. Admiral had broadcast the standard extermination ultimatum, giving humanity one standard cycle to surrender before the bombardment began. The humans had not surrendered. They had not responded at all. The fleet had interpreted this silence as defiance, or perhaps simple despair. They had begun preparations for the attack. Then something had happened. The recording showed Admiral suddenly stopping mid-sentence. His eyes went wide. His hands went to his chest. Around him, other officers began to collapse. Alarms went off as across the ship fell unconscious or died at their stations. The process took less than 1 minute. In that single minute, every living being on every ship in the fleet died. No weapons were fired. No enemy vessels appeared. Nothing attacked them from outside. They simply died all at once, as if someone had switched off their lives. The last image on the recording was Admiral's face as life left his body. He did not look afraid. He looked confused. He had died without understanding what had killed him. S played the recording for the others. They watched in horrified silence. What did this? Commander asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. What kind of weapon kills 3 million people without leaving a trace? Scholar was looking at her. Translucent face was troubled. In the archives, I found references to the Prometheus Protocol. I could not access the details, but I found enough to suspect something. She paused. This was not a weapon that humans built, was it? This is something they found. Met her Gaze, for a moment she seemed to be weighing her words carefully, then she nodded. You are partly correct, said. The Prometheus Protocol is not entirely something we built, it is something we are. What does that mean? Ease demanded. Speak plainly. Walked to viewport and looked out at the silent fleet. When our explorers found the architect ruins on Mars, they discovered many things, technologies we could barely understand, star charts showing thousands of worlds, records of civilizations that rose and fell millions of years ago. She paused. And they found information about us, about humanity, about what we really are. What are you? Asked. We are not native to Earth, said. Our species was created, engineered, seated on this planet 300,000 years ago by the architects. They placed us here for a purpose. Investigators stared at her. The idea that humanity was an artificial species was shocking enough, but the implication of her words was even more disturbing. What purpose? As asked the architects. Were scientists observers. They watched the galaxy for millions of years. They saw civilizations rise and fall. They saw empires conquer and destroy. They saw the same patterns repeat over and over again. Aggressive species would emerge, develop weapons, and use those weapons to dominate or exterminate others. The cycle of violence never ended. Turn to face them. The architects tried to break that cycle. They tried diplomacy. They tried intervention. They tried everything they could think of. Nothing worked. The aggressive species always won. The peaceful ones always died. She paused. So they decided to create something new, a species that could survive, a species that could not be exterminated. They created humanity, said softly. Yes, they took an existing primate species on Earth and modified it. They gave us intelligence and creativity and adaptability, but they also gave us something else, something hidden deep in our biology, a defense mechanism that would activate only in the most extreme circumstances. The Prometheus Protocol said, nodded. When humanity faces an existential threat, when we collectively recognize that our species is about to be destroyed, something happens. Our brains begin to resonate with each other. Billions of minds connecting, synchronizing, focusing on the same target, and when that connection reaches a certain threshold, we emit a signal. What kind of signal? Asked. He was not sure. He wanted to know the answer. Biological signal. It travels faster than light. It passes through shields and armor as if they were not there. It targets specific biological markers in the threatening species. Looked at us with something like sympathy. When 12 billion humans looked at your fleet and collectively decided that you were a threat to our existence, the protocol activated. The signal went out, and every Draconian within range simply stopped living. The bridge was silent. The dead watched with empty eyes. Tried to process what he had heard. Humanity was not a natural species. They were a weapon, a biological weapon, created by an ancient race to end the cycle of galactic violence. And when the Draconian Empire had tried to destroy them, they had triggered that weapon. You killed 3 million of my people, said. His voice was hollow with nothing more than a thought. It was not a thought, said. It was survival. 12 billion people facing death together, refusing to die. The protocol is not something we consciously control. It is a reflex, a response to genuine existential threat. She paused. Your Fleet came to kill every human being alive. The protocol responded to that threat. It is regrettable, but it was not chosen. Can it be used again? Asked. Could you do this to other species? Yes, admitted, but only if they threaten our extinction. The protocol requires genuine existential fear from the entire population. It cannot be faked or manufactured. It cannot be used for conquest or aggression. It is purely defensive. But it can be used, said. Any species that attacks Earth will suffer the same fate. Yes, then humanity is untouchable, said. No one can attack you, no fleet can threaten you. You are immune to invasion. That is correct, said, and that is why we are sharing this information with you. We want the galaxy to understand. Humanity does not seek conflict. We do not want to kill anyone, but we cannot be destroyed. Anyone who tries will face the same fate as the 8th Fleet. She gestured at the silent ships around them. This is our message to the galaxy. This is our warning. Leave us alone and we will live in peace. Attack us and you will die. It is that simple. S looked at the bodies of his people scattered across the bridge. 3 million warriors killed without firing a single shot. The mightiest fleet his empire had ever assembled, reduced to a graveyard of silent ships. He had come here seeking answers. He had found them, but they were not the answers he wanted. They were not answers that anyone would want. The council will need to know about this, Commander said. Her voice was steady, but Ease could see the fear. Her eyes, they will need to understand what humanity is. Yes, agreed. That is why we allowed this investigation. That is why I brought you here. The truth must be known, not to threaten anyone, but to prevent future tragedies like this one. She walked toward the exit of the bridge, then stopped and turned back. General S., I am sorry for the loss of your people. I mean that sincerely. We did not want this war. We did not start it, but we had no choice but to end it. She paused. I hope that someday your empire will understand. I hope that someday we can have peace. She left the bridge. Others followed slowly. S remained behind for a moment, alone among the dead. He reached out and touched the cold scales of Admiral's hand. The Admiral had been his friend once. They had trained together, fought together, celebrated victories together. Now was dead, and S was left with the terrible knowledge of why humanity was not a weak species to be conquered. They were not primitives to be exterminated. They were something else entirely, something that the galaxy had never seen before. They were survivors, and they had proven that nothing and no one could take that away from them. S bowed his head in respect for the fallen. Then he turned and walked back to the ship, leaving the dead to their endless silence. Journey back to Earth passed in silence. General sat alone in a corner of the ship, staring at nothing. Commander focused on piloting. Scholar reviewed her notes again and again, as if hopping to find some detail that would make everything make sense. Director had returned with them. She understood that the investigators needed time to process what they had seen. She did not try to fill the silence with words. Some things required quiet contemplation. When they reached Earth orbit, spoke for the first time in hours. Before you return to the council, there is one more thing I would like to show you, one more piece of the truth that I think you need to understand. What more could there be? S asked. His voice was tired and empty. You have already told us that humanity is a weapon that your species was created to kill. What else is there to know? The context said, you know what the Prometheus Protocol does, but you do not yet understand why the architects created it. You do not know the full story. She paused. I think you deserve to know. I think the galaxy deserves to know. And exchanged glances. They had seen enough horrors for one day, but they were investigators. Their job was to find the truth, no matter how terrible it might be. Showa said, led them back down to Earth to a facility hidden deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Mountains rose above them, ancient and silent, their peaks covered in snow. The entrance to the facility was disguised as a simple maintenance building. Inside, elevators descended Killam into the rock. This is the archive, explained as they descended. It is where we store everything we recovered from the architect ruins on Mars. The technology, the records, the history of a species that shaped the galaxy millions of years before any of us existed. The elevator doors opened onto a vast underground chamber. It was filled with artifacts arranged in careful displays. Strange machines, glowing crystals, objects that easy description, but the most impressive display was at the center of the chamber, a massive holographic projection system surrounded by chairs and consoles. This is where we first learned the truth about ourselves, said. This is where we discovered what the architects intended for us. She activated the projection system, the chamber filled with light, and suddenly they were standing in the middle of a star map. Thousands of points of light surrounded them, each one representing a star system. Lines connected some of the points, showing relationships and connections that the investigators did not understand. The architects were the first intelligent species in this galaxy. They emerged over 1 billion years ago when the universe was still young. They spread across the stars, exploring, learning, cataloging everything they found. For millions of years they were alone, the only intelligent life in existence. The holographic display shifted to show strange beings. They were tall and graceful with elongated limbs and large heads. Their skin was gray and smooth. Their eyes were huge and dark. They did not look threatening. They looked curious, gentle. They watched as other species began to evolve, continued. They were excited at first. They hoped to find companions, friends, others who shared their love of knowledge and discovery. She paused. They were disappointed. The display changed again. Now it showed scenes of violence, alien species fighting, cities burning, worlds dying. The images came faster and faster, showing endless cycles of war and destruction. Every intelligent species they encountered eventually turned to violence. Aggression was the rule, not the exception. Species would develop technology, and then they would use that technology to conquer and destroy. The architects tried to intervene. They tried to teach peace. They tried to stop the killing. Shook her head. It never worked. The aggressive species always won. The peaceful ones always died, and eventually even the architects themselves came under attack. Scholar stepped forward. Her translucent form glowed brighter as she absorbed this information. The legends among my people speak of this, the great wars that nearly destroyed the galaxy, the extinction of the first civilizations. Yes, said the architects, fought back. But they were not warriors. They lost billions of their own people before they finally managed to defend themselves. And when the fighting stopped, they realized something terrible. The galaxy would always be like this. Violence was not an accident, it was the natural state of intelligent life. Peace was the exception, not the rule, so they created humanity, set as a weapon against violence. Not exactly, replied. They created humanity as a balance, an immune system. For the galaxy, she gestured at the holographic display, which now showed a map of the Milky Way with dozens of points highlighted over millions of years. The architects seeded life on hundreds of worlds. They created species with the potential to develop intelligence. They hoped that some of these species would grow beyond their violent nature, would evolve into something better. What happened to those species? As asked, most of them were destroyed, said, by aggressive civilizations that saw them as threats or resources. The architects watched as their children were wiped out, one by the same cycle of violence they had tried to end. The display showed worlds being bombarded from space, civilizations being exterminated, species dying without ever reaching their potential. It was a gallery of genocide stretching across millions of years. Finally, the architects realized that they needed a different approach. Simply creating peaceful species was not enough. Those species needed to be able to defend themselves. They needed to be able to survive in a hostile galaxy. Looked at the investigators, so they created humanity. We are different from the other species they seeded, she continued. We were engineered to be adaptable, to be resilient, to survive anything that the galaxy could throw at us, and we were given the Prometheus protocol, the ability to strike back against any species that tried to destroy us. Why us? As asked, why choose humans for this purpose? Because of our nature, said. Humans are unique in the galaxy. We are capable of both great violence and great compassion. We can be warriors when we need to be, but we can also be peacemakers. We can unite against a common enemy, but we can also cooperate with former enemies when the fighting is done. She paused. Architects believe that we had the potential to break the cycle, to show the galaxy that there was another way, but the protocol is a weapon, pointed out. How does killing 3 million Draconians show another way? Because it only activates against existential threats. Said the protocol cannot be used for conquest. It cannot be used for aggression. It can only be used for survival. Humanity cannot attack others with it. We can only defend ourselves. She spread her hands. The architects wanted to create a species that could not be destroyed, but also could not become destroyers themselves. They wanted to create a balance. Was studying the holographic display with intense focus. This explains why you remained hidden for so long, why you pretended to be primitive. You were waiting. Yes, admitted. We discovered what we were in 2089 when we found the architect ruins. At first, we did not believe it. We spent decades verifying the information, trying to understand what it meant, and when we finally accepted the truth, we had to decide what to do with it. You could have revealed yourselves then, said. You could have told the galaxy what you were, and what would have happened? Asked. If we had announced to the galaxy that we were an engineered species with the power to kill any attacker, how do you think the Council would have responded? How would the Draconians have responded? How would any aggressive species have responded. The investigators were silent. They knew. The answer, an announcement like that, would have been seen as a threat. It would have provoked exactly the kind of attack that the Draconians had eventually launched, so we waited. Continued, we hid our true capabilities. We pretended to be weak and primitive. We let the galaxy ignore us while we prepared for the inevitable day when someone would decide to test us, and the Draconians were that test, Sidderly. Yes, we did not choose them. We did not provoke them, but when they came to destroy us, we had no choice but to respond. Met his gaze directly. I know that you are angry. I know that you want revenge for your people, but ask yourself this: if the situation were reversed, if the Draconian Empire had a defense that could stop any attack, would they not use it? Would any species not use it? S had no answer. He knew that his own people would have used any weapon available to protect themselves. They had done so many times in their history. The only difference was that humanity's weapon was more effective than anything the Draconians could have imagined. What happened to the architects? Asked. Suddenly, where are they now? Expression became sad. They are gone. They left this galaxy millions of years ago. By that time they had grown tired of the endless violence they had seen. Too much death. They had tried too many times to bring peace and failed. She paused. Before they left, they created us. We were their last hope, their final attempt to leave something good behind. Where did they go? Asked. We do not know. Their records indicate that they plan to travel to another galaxy, to start fresh somewhere new, to try again with different species in a different place. Shook her head. We have no way of knowing if they succeeded. We may never know. So humanity is alone, said the last children of a dead race. We are not their only children, corrected. They seeded life on many worlds. Some of those species survive today. Some of them are represented in the Galactic Council. She smiled slightly. Architects hoped that someday their children would find each other, would recognize their common heritage, would work together to create the peace that the architects could never achieve. Is that what you want? S asked. Peace. Yes, said simply. That is all we have ever wanted. We did not ask to be created. We did not choose to be a weapon, but since we are what we are, we have decided to use our existence for good. We will defend ourselves if we must, but we will never attack others. We will trade and share knowledge with any species willing to do the same. We will help build the peaceful galaxy that the architects dreamed of. And if species refuse, as asked, if they see you as a threat and attack anyway, then they will die, said. Her voice was sad but certain. We cannot change what we are. We cannot disable the protocol. Even if we wanted to make ourselves vulnerable, we could not. The defense is built into our biology at the deepest level. It is part of what makes us human. She turned off the holographic display. The chamber returned to normal. The artifacts of the architects standing silent in their cases. That is the full truth, said. Humanity was created to be an immune system for the galaxy. We eliminate existential threats without being able to become threats ourselves. We are the architect's answer to the problem of violence. She paused. I know it is not the answer you wanted. I know it raises more questions than it answers, but it is the truth. The investigators stood in silence, trying to process everything they had learned. The implications were staggering. If what said was true, then humanity was not just another species, they were the key to ending the cycle of violence that had plagued the galaxy since the beginning, but they were also terrifying, a species that could kill any attacker with nothing more than collective will, a species that was immune to invasion, a species that could not be controlled or contained by conventional means. General S thought about his people. Draconian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds, they had crushed enemies without mercy, they had believed themselves to be the strongest species in the galaxy. Now they knew that they were not. Now they knew that there was something stronger. The question was, what would they do with that knowledge? You have given us much to think about, Commander said finally. We must return to the Council and make our report. They will want to discuss the implications. I understand, said. Before you go, I want to make one thing clear. Humanity is not interested in joining the Council. We have no desire to participate in galactic politics. We simply want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. The Council may not accept that, warned. Some species will see you as a threat that must be dealt with. Any species that attacks us will meet the same fate as the Draconian fleet said. This is not a threat, it is simply a statement of fact. The protocol cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. It responds to genuine threats automatically. She paused. I am telling you this so that you can warn others, so that no more lives are lost needlessly. And if we do not attack, S asked, if my people swallow their pride and leave you alone, what then? Then we can be friends, said, or at least neighbors who respect each other's boundaries. We have much to offer the galaxy, technologies that the architects left behind, knowledge that could benefit everyone. We are willing to share if others are willing to receive. S considered her words. He thought about the dead fleet floating in the outer system, 3 million warriors who had died for nothing. Pride had killed them. Arrogance had killed them. The belief that no one could resist Draconian power had killed them. Perhaps it was time for a different approach. I will report what I have seen truthfully, S said. I will tell my people what humanity is. I will recommend that we pursue peace rather than vengeance. He met gaze, but I cannot guarantee that my words will be heeded. The Draconian Empire does not forgive easily. I understand, said. All I ask is that you try give peace a chance before choosing war. S nodded slowly. It was not much of a promise, but it was something, a small seed of hope in a situation that had seemed hopeless. Investigators returned to their ship as they prepared to leave Earth orbit. Approached one last time. The architects created other species as well, she said. You mentioned that some of them survive. Today, are my people among them? Smiled. We have found evidence that suggests the Etherians may share some genetic markers with architect technology. Your translucent bodies, your long lives, your dedication to knowledge and history. She paused. It is possible that your people are also children of the architects. Another attempt to create something better. Absorbed this information in silence. The idea that her people might share a heritage with humanity was startling. But it was also somehow comforting. They were not alone in the universe. They were part of a larger family created by beings who had hoped for peace. Thank you, said, for sharing the truth with us. I know it was not easy. The truth is never easy, replied, but it is necessary. I hope that what you have learned here will help create a better future for all of us. The quiet observer departed from Earth orbit as they flew toward the edge of the solar system. The investigators looked back at the small blue planet that had changed everything. Humanity had revealed themselves. They were not what anyone expected. They were not weak or primitive. They were not aggressive or conquering. They were something entirely new, a species created to survive, a species created to end violence. Now the galaxy would have to decide how to respond. Commander set course for the Galactic Council Station. The journey would take several days. During that time they would prepare their report. They would decide how to present what they had learned. They would try to find words that would help others understand. But deep down they all knew that words might not be enough. The galaxy had a long history of violence. Species did not change overnight. Old enemies did not become friends simply because someone told them a story. The truth about humanity would spread, and when it did, the universe would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every known species had gathered to hear the investigation report. Some had traveled for weeks to be here. Others watched through holographic links from their distant. The fate of Earth and perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy would be discussed today. Commander stood at the central platform, the same place where Ambassador Axe had announced the disappearance of the Draconian fleet months ago. Beside her stood Scholar and General S. They had agreed to present their findings together, each offering their own perspective on what they had witnessed. High Admiral sat in the Draconian section, his yellow eyes fixed on the investigators. He had heard preliminary reports about their findings. He knew that the news was not what his empire wanted to hear, but he had agreed to let the full presentation proceed before responding. Ambassador Axe called the chamber to order. The murmuring of hundreds of voices slowly died down until silence filled the great hall. We gather today to hear the official report on the destruction of the Draconian 8th Fleet. Axe announced. Commander will present the findings. I remind all representatives that questions will be held until the presentation is complete. Stepped forward. She took a deep breath. Everything she was about to say would change the political balance of the galaxy. She hoped she was up to the task. Council members, she began. What I am about to tell you will be difficult to believe. Some of you will deny it. Some of you will fear it. Some of you will refuse to accept it. But I swear on my honor as an officer that everything I say is true. Scholar has the evidence. General S. has witnessed it firsthand. There is no deception here, only truth. She activated the holographic display system. Images of Earth appeared, floating in the center of the chamber. The planet Earth is home to a species called humanity. Until recently they were classified as primitive, barely spacefaring, and of no significance to galactic affairs. This classification was wrong. Humanity has been deliberately hiding their true capabilities for over 250 years. The display changed to show the architect ruins on Mars. Strange artifacts and alien writing filled the images. In the year 2089, by their calendar, human explorers discovered ruins on their neighboring planet. These ruins belong to the architects, an ancient species that predates all known civilizations by millions of years. From these ruins, humanity learned technologies that they kept secret from the galaxy. They also learned the truth about their own origins. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The architects were considered legends. By most species, the idea that they were real, that their artifacts existed, was startling. Humanity was created by the architects. Continued. They were engineered as a species with a specific purpose. They were designed to survive any threat, no matter how powerful, and they were given a defense mechanism that cannot be defeated by conventional weapons. The display changed again. Now it showed the silent Draconian fleet floating. The belt gasps echoed through the chamber as representatives recognized the ships. The Draconian Eighth Fleet was not destroyed in the traditional sense. Every ship is intact, every system is functional, but every crew member is dead. 3 million Draconian soldiers died simultaneously, without wounds, without damage to their vessels, without any sign of combat. High Admiral rose from his seat. How he demanded, what weapon could do this? It is not a weapon in any traditional sense, said. The humans call it the Prometheus Protocol. It is a biological defense mechanism built into human genetics by the architects. When humanity faces a genuine existential threat, when their entire species recognizes that extinction is possible, the protocol activates automatically. She explained the rest of it. The collective human consciousness, the signal that passed through shields and armor, the targeted biological effect that killed the threatening species while leaving everything else untouched. As she spoke, the chamber grew more and more agitated. Some representatives shouted questions, others demanded proof. A few looked terrified. The Draconians sat in rigid silence, their scales tight with tension. General S stepped forward to add his testimony. I have walked through the flagship of our fleet, he said. His voice was heavy with grief. I have seen the bodies of our warriors. They died without pain, but they died completely. Every ship, every soldier, all of them. He paused. I did not want to believe it, but I have seen the evidence with my own eyes. The humans speak the truth. Scholar presented her findings from the human archives. She showed the documentation of the architect discoveries. She explained the genetic markers in human biology that supported their claims. She described the safeguards built into the protocol that prevented it from being used offensively. The protocol cannot be activated, deliberately said. It responds only to genuine existential fear shared by the entire human population. It cannot be used for conquest. It cannot be used for revenge. It is purely defensive. That is still a weapon, High Admiral argued. A species that cannot be attacked is a species that can do whatever it wants without consequences. No, replied. Humanity has had the protocol for over 200 years. In that time, they have not expanded beyond their home system. They have not threatened any other species. They have not attempted to conquer or dominate. She paused. They have simply lived in peace. That is all they want. That is all they have ever wanted. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives argued about what humanity's existence meant for galactic politics. Some demanded that Earth be isolated, cut off from all contact with other species. Others suggested preemptive attacks using unmanned weapons or biological agents. A few argued for acceptance and cooperation. Through it all, the investigators stood firm. They answered questions patiently. They repeated the evidence as many times as necessary. They refused to speculate about things they did not know. Finally, High Admiral rose to speak again. Chamber fell silent. The Draconian Empire was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Their response to this situation would determine much of what happened next. Looked old. His green scales had lost some of their color. His eyes seemed tired in a way that S had never seen before. My people have conquered many worlds, said his voice was quiet but carried through the silent chamber. We have believed ourselves to be the strongest species in the galaxy. We have taken what we wanted. We have destroyed anyone who stood in our way. He paused. Now we have encountered a species that we cannot conquer, a species that we cannot threaten, a species that has killed 3 million of our warriors without firing a single shot. He looked around the chamber at the representatives of 100 species. Many of them had been enemies of the Draconian Empire. Many of them had suffered under Draconian aggression. They watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. I will not lie to you, continued. Part of me wants revenge. Part of me wants to send every ship we have to Earth and burn that planet to ashes. But I am not a fool. I have seen the evidence. I understand what would happen if we tried. He turned to look at the holographic display, which still showed the silent fleet in the belt. Those were good warriors, strong warriors. They followed orders and did their duty. They died because we sent them to attack a species that could not be defeated. His voice grew heavy. Their deaths are on our hands, not humanity's. We chose to invade. We chose to threaten extinction. The humans simply defended themselves. A rumble went through the Draconian section. Some officers looked angry. Others looked confused, but none of them challenged their High Admiral. The Draconian Empire will not attack Earth again, announced. We will formally recognize humanity's right to exist. We will pursue diplomatic relations instead of military conquest. He paused. This is not surrender. This is wisdom. There is no honor in fighting an enemy that cannot be beaten. There is only death. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered the announcement. Others protested. Arguments broke out between representatives. It took Ambassador Axe several minutes to restore order. When the chamber was quiet again, General S. stepped forward. He had one more thing to say. I have spent my entire life serving the Draconian military, said. I have fought in 100 battles. I have killed more enemies than I can count. I believe that strength came from weapons and ships and the willingness to destroy those who opposed us. He looked at the holographic display of Earth. I was wrong. True strength is not the ability to kill. True strength is the ability to survive. Humanity has that strength. They have had it all along. They simply chose not to use it until they had no other choice. He turned to face the chamber. The humans taught me something. On their world, they showed me that violence is not the only answer. They showed me that peace is possible if both sides are willing to try. He paused. I am a warrior. I have been a warrior my entire life, but even warriors can learn. Even warriors can change. He removed his military insignia and placed it on the platform in front of him. I will not fight against humanity. I will not seek revenge for our fallen Warriors, instead I will work for. Peace, I will use whatever influence I have to prevent more needless deaths. He met the eyes of every representative who would look at him. I hope that others will do the same. The chamber was silent. No one had expected this. Draconian general advocating for peace was unprecedented. Some species did not believe it was real. Others watched with cautious hope. Elder counselor N of the Etherans rose slowly, her ancient voice carried through the chamber. The council has much to discuss, she said, but I believe that a vote is needed on one matter immediately. Humanity has requested to be left in peace. They have not asked for council membership. They have not asked for anything except to be allowed to live their lives without interference. She paused. I move that the council formally recognize Earth as a protected world. Any attack on humanity will be considered an attack on the council itself. The motion surprised many representatives. Protection status was normally reserved for species that were too weak to defend themselves. Humanity clearly did not need protection, but N explained her reasoning. This is not about protecting humanity. This is about protecting ourselves. If humanity is attacked, they will defend themselves. The attacking species will die. This will destabilize the galaxy and lead to more violence. She paused. By granting protection status, we send a clear message to all species: leave Earth alone. This benefits everyone. The vote was taken. It was not unanimous. Some species refused to accept that humanity could not be challenged. Some believed that protection status was a sign of weakness, but the majority voted favor. Earth was now protected by galactic law. 3 months later, a small ceremony was held in the council chamber. A new chair was being added to the assembly, not for a representative, but for an observer. Humanity had finally agreed to send someone to the council, not to participate in politics, but to communicate and build relationships. Ambassador was the first human many species had ever seen in person. She was a tall woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore simple clothing and carried no weapons. She looked almost fragile compared to some of the massive aliens around her, but everyone in the chamber knew what she represented: the species that could not be destroyed, the children of the architects. The immune system of the galaxy approached the central platform and faced the assembled representatives. For a long moment, she simply looked at them, studying their faces, their bodies, their expressions. Then she spoke. I come before you today as a representative of humanity, she said. Her voice was clear and steady. I am not here to threaten you. I am not here to demand anything. I am here to offer something that my species has always valued: hope. She activated a holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. For 300,000 years, humanity lived on one small planet, isolated from the rest of the universe. We fought among ourselves. We struggled to survive. We made terrible mistakes, but we also learned. We grew. We became something better than we were. The display changed to show human achievements: art and music, science and technology, cities and gardens, hospitals and schools, children playing in sunlight. We did not ask to be created by the architects. We did not ask to be given the burden of the Prometheus protocol, but we have accepted what we are. We have tried to use our existence for good. Paused. We offer this same hope to all of you. She looked around the chamber at the representatives of 100 worlds. The architects believed that peace was possible. They believed that intelligent species could learn to live together without violence. They created us as proof of that belief. She spread her hands. We cannot force you to choose peace. We cannot make you stop fighting among yourselves, but we can show you that another way exists. We can prove that survival does not require conquest, that strength does not require cruelty. She lowered her hands. Humanity extends its hand in friendship to all who come. In peace we will trade, we will share knowledge, we will help those who ask for help. We will never attack first. We will never seek to dominate others. She paused, but we will also never be victims again. The days of exterminating species you consider inferior are over. If you attack us, you will die. If you attack each other, we will not intervene. But know this, the architects created us to end the cycle of violence. And someday, whether it takes centuries or that cycle will end. She smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and hopeful. I look forward to that day. I hope that some of you will live to see it. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, applause began to spread. It started with the Aetherians, then spread to the then to other species. Not everyone joined in. Some species sat in stony silence, but many clapped, many cheered. It was not peace, not yet. The galaxy was too old and too violent for that, but it was a beginning, a seed planted in rocky soil. Ambassador took her seat in the observer's chair. She was surrounded by aliens who had once planned to ignore or destroy her species. Now they looked at her with a mixture of fear and respect. She did not mind the fear. Fear could become understanding. Understanding could become trust. Trust could become friendship. Humanity had waited 300 years for this moment. They could wait longer if necessary. Time was on their side. Far from the council chamber, far from Earth, far from all known space, something stirred in the darkness. Between galaxies, ancient sensors detected a signal that had traveled millions of light years, a confirmation that something long awaited had finally occurred. The architects had left more than humanity behind. They had left watchers, monitors, systems designed to track the progress of their final experiment. Deep in the void, a dormant machine received the signal and began to wake. It processed the information slowly, comparing it against parameters set millions of years ago. The signal indicated success. The species had survived its first true test. The Prometheus protocol had functioned as designed. The cycle of violence had been broken, at least in one small way. The machine considered this information. Then it began to transmit across the impossible distances between galaxies. Message went out, a report to its creators wherever they might be. The message was simple: experiment complete. Species viable, awaiting further instructions. Whether anyone would ever receive that message was unknown. Whether the architect still existed to respond was uncertain, but the message was sent nonetheless, traveling through the darkness toward an unknown destination. Back on Earth, 12 billion humans went about their daily lives. They worked in, loved and raised children. They created art and made discoveries. They looked up at the stars and wondered what the future might bring. They did not know about the message traveling through the void. They did not know that their Existence was part of a larger plan that stretched back millions of years. They knew only that they had survived, that they were free, that they had a place in the universe, and perhaps that was enough. Perhaps survival was all that mattered. Perhaps the rest would take care of itself given enough time. Humanity had endured, and now for the first time in their history they faced a future without fear, not because they were strong enough to destroy their enemies, but because they were strong enough to survive anything the universe could throw at them. The architects had given them that gift. Now it was up to humanity to use it well. The stars waited, the future beckoned, and somewhere in the great wheel of the galaxy, a new story was just beginning.